Have you ever looked around your workplace or your community and realized that the unwritten rules of the game have completely changed since we were in our 20s? Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today, we are diving into a conversation that might feel a little uncomfortable at first. But it is a reality check that almost every American over 40 needs to hear if they want to protect their career, their finances, and their family. If you find yourself nodding your head to that, you are definitely not alone. Most of us were raised on a very specific set of values, the traditional American dream playbook. We were told to work hard, be nice to everyone, keep our heads down, and trust that good things would naturally happen. But as we cross into our 40s and 50s, many of us wake up to a harsh truth. Sometimes, just being a good person isn't enough to cross the finish line safely anymore. Let us be completely honest about the stage of life we are in. When you are caught in the middle of the classic sandwich generation grind, balancing a demanding corporate job, managing a mortgage, trying to save for retirement, and dealing with the expenses of teenage kids while simultaneously worrying about your aging parents, you simply do not have the luxury of being naive. The stakes are just too high. That is exactly why today we are exploring a framework that comes from deep strategic wisdom, but applies perfectly to modern American life. It is the philosophy of balancing a warm, benevolent heart with sharp, highly protective boundaries and strategies. Some historical strategists call it having the thick skin and the practical mindset required to navigate a competitive world. Now, let me be clear. This is not about becoming a bad person. It is about becoming a good, successful person who actually knows how to protect their resources, their career, and their loved ones. Think about it. We see this play out in everyday American environments all the time. Whether you are trying to navigate a toxic corporate environment at a Fortune 500 company or just handling local business dealings, there is a massive difference between genuine kindness and blind innocence. Yet, we have been conditioned by Hollywood movies and childhood stories to believe that pure, unfiltered idealism always wins the day. We love the classic Western where the hero rides into town, shows mercy to the bad guy, turns his back, and walks away completely unscathed. But in the real world, if you turn your back on a competitor who wants your spot on the executive team, or if you show total vulnerability to a predatory business partner, you get absolutely crushed. Real life does not have a Hollywood scriptwriter ensuring a happy ending for the naive. Think about your own life for a moment. Have you ever loaned a significant amount of money to a long-time acquaintance, only to have them completely disappear from your life? Or maybe you shared an important project idea with a colleague over lunch, only to watch them present it to the leadership team the next morning as their own invention. Those are the moments that leave us feeling incredibly bitter, because we realize our goodness was used against us. The reality is that human behavior changes dramatically based on the scale of the stakes involved. Let us look at a practical financial example that almost anyone can relate to. If you lend someone $20 to cover their lunch at a local diner, they will almost always pay you back the next day. Why? Because $20 isn't worth losing a relationship over, but change the stakes. What happens if you lend someone $50,000 from your hard-earned savings to help them launch a business? Suddenly, the math changes completely in their head. When the numbers get that high, people begin to calculate whether the size of the payout is worth cutting ties with you forever. It is a cynical truth, but a highly realistic one. The moment the stakes rise, human nature often shifts from cooperation to self-preservation. And that brings us to the core danger we face in our professional and personal lives: the distinction between obvious adversaries and hidden competitors. In any standard office, you have people who are openly difficult. You know exactly where they stand, and because they are transparently difficult, they are actually very stable and easy to manage. You just keep your distance. The real danger comes from the individuals who master the art of the perfect first impression. These are the people who show up looking like absolute saints. They bring donuts to the office, remember everyone's birthday, and offer to help with every minor task. They build an immaculate facade. But historical strategy teaches us to be deeply cautious of anyone who appears entirely flawless on the surface. Why? Because human beings are naturally flawed. An unblemished exterior is almost always a calculated performance. These individuals operate on a very specific timeline. They do small favors for you for months, building up a massive reservoir of unearned trust, but they are waiting for the high-stakes moment. When a major promotion comes along, or when a massive corporate restructuring occurs, they will use every piece of personal information you confided in them over coffee to completely sweep you off the board. And because you never saw it coming, you don't even have the chance to recover, when you realize how cutthroat the world can be. The immediate temptation is to swing completely to the other extreme. You might start thinking, fine. If the world is that cold, then I need to become completely ruthless myself. I need to channel my inner corporate shark. Stop caring about anyone and just aggressively pursue my own interests at all costs. But I completely disagree with that extreme approach. If you become a genuinely toxic, ruthless person, you might win a few short-term victories, but you will ultimately ruin your reputation. Alienate your family and destroy your own peace of mind. That is a miserable way to live. Especially as we get older and start thinking about our legacy. The real mastery isn't about becoming a villain. It is about learning how to put on a protective suit of armor. You keep your core values completely intact. But you stop allowing yourself to be an easy target. If you look at the foundation of strategic leadership throughout history, the most successful figures were never one-dimensional. They knew exactly when to smile, when to play the underdog, and when to step back to let an opponent expose their own weaknesses. They didn't win by being the loudest or the most aggressive person in the room. They won by mastering their own ego. They knew how to blend into the background when they didn't hold the upper hand. They would tell self-deprecating stories, talk about their recent setbacks, and make everyone around them feel incredibly comfortable and superior. And because their competitors saw them as completely harmless, those competitors dropped their guard entirely. They stopped watching, which gave the patient strategist the exact time and space needed to quietly build resources and make a move when the timing was absolutely perfect. That is the exact opposite of how the average person operates today, especially in our hyper-connected culture. Everyone is so desperate to look successful right now. We go to a neighborhood barbecue or a family gathering, and the first thing people do is brag about their new luxury vehicle, their latest promotion, or how perfect their lifestyle is. But that is a massive strategic error among peers and acquaintances. When you brag to the people in your immediate social circle, you aren't inspiring them. You are actually triggering deep-seated envy and resentment. Human nature dictates that while people might admire a distant billionaire or a celebrity they see on television, they often feel intensely threatened when someone in their own backyard suddenly starts outperforming them. If you want a peaceful life with your neighbors and acquaintances, the smartest thing you can do is keep your sharp edges hidden. Be a little low-key. Talk about your minor everyday frustrations, laugh at your own mishaps, and let them feel like they are doing great. Save your high-value presentation for the moments where it actually matters, like when you are sitting across the table from a major investor, a client, or a key decision-maker at work who only aligns with strength. That requires putting your pride in your pocket, which is one of the hardest things for a mature adult to do. But let us take this concept directly into the workplace, because that is where the stakes are highest for our demographic. We have all seen the dedicated employee who has been at a company for years. They do excellent work. They never complain, they stay late. But they constantly get passed over for promotions, while a smooth-talking corporate politician glides right up the ladder. It is frustrating, but it happens because the quiet hard worker is operating under a massive delusion. They believe that merit alone is enough, but leadership doesn't just look at output. When an executive is choosing someone for a high-level position, their number one priority isn't actually technical skill. It is safety, alignment, and trust. They want to know that the person they promote will protect the team, handle pressure smoothly, and align perfectly with leadership's vision. The employee who sits at their desk looking frustrated, sighing loudly, and constantly pushing back against every corporate directive is doing the exact opposite of creating safety. They might think they are just being authentic or standing up for what is right, but to the leadership team, they look like a liability. Meanwhile, a strategic professional understands that corporate life requires a bit of emotional discipline. You have to set your immediate personal ego aside. If the leadership team is fully committed to a specific initiative, you don't openly mock it by the water cooler. You study it, you understand their underlying goals, and you align your work to help them succeed. When you make your leadership look exceptional, you naturally become indispensable to them. But what happens when someone crosses the line? What happens when a toxic colleague realizes you are trying to be cooperative and decides to take advantage of you? When you are pushed into a corner, you cannot afford to hesitate or show weakness. If someone is actively trying to undermine your career or threaten your livelihood, a soft, passive response will only invite them to strike harder. There is an old rule in strategy that says if you are forced to deliver a counter-strike to protect your boundaries, you cannot do it halfway. A minor, hesitant response only angers your opponent and guarantees they will spend the next 6 months planning their revenge against you. If you must act to defend your position, you must do it with absolute clarity, complete focus, and enough impact to resolve the issue permanently so they never challenge your boundaries again. It sounds intense, but it is the only way to establish true boundaries. You address the source of the disruption directly. You neutralize the threat using official, professional documentation and policies. And you send a clear message to the room that you are not someone to be trifled with. Once that boundary is established, others naturally step back and treat you with the respect you deserve. Now that we have laid out the reality of how these dynamics work, let us pivot to the actionable solutions. How do we take these high-level strategic concepts and actually apply them to our lives starting tomorrow morning, without losing our integrity or our warmth? The very first solution is to implement the golden rule of boundaries. Keep your emotional relationships completely separate from your transactional relationships. This is a massive trap for adults over 40. We love the idea of turning our workplace into a family, or going into business with our actual family members and close friends. But blending sentimentality with economics is a recipe for immense friction. With the people you love, your spouse, your children, your siblings, keep business and financial leverage out of the equation as much as humanly possible. Don't enter into complex business partnerships with your best friends unless you are willing to risk the friendship. And on the flip side, when you are at work, stop looking for deep emotional validation or lifetime best friends. Treat your colleagues with immense kindness, respect, and professionalism, but maintain a clear, healthy boundary. When you keep love and logic in their proper lanes, your life becomes infinitely simpler. The second solution is to change the way you communicate with acquaintances and peers. Stop broadcasting your major wins to people who aren't explicitly invested in your success. When you are catching up with acquaintances or neighbors, focus on being an incredible listener. Ask them about their lives, their achievements, and their challenges. Let them take center stage. Not only does this protect you from unnecessary envy, but it actually makes you incredibly engaging to be around, because people love to be heard. The third solution applies directly to navigating your career or your business. Start paying closer attention to the actual needs of the decision makers in your life. If you want to build true professional security, step back from your daily to-do list and ask yourself, what keeps my leadership awake at night? What is the biggest challenge my organization is facing this quarter? When you shift your focus toward solving the high-level problems that matter to leadership, your value to the organization skyrockets overnight. And finally, the fourth solution is to actively build up your personal professional leverage. In the modern landscape, you cannot rely on blind loyalty from an employer. True peace of mind comes from knowing you have options. That means keeping your skills sharp, staying connected with a broad professional network outside of your current company, and maintaining a robust financial reserve. When you have high-quality options, you naturally carry yourself with a quiet confidence that people can sense from a mile away. You stop looking desperate, and you start looking powerful. That quiet confidence is the ultimate goal. It means you can walk into any room, whether it is a corporate boardroom or a community meeting, with a warm smile on your face and genuine kindness in your heart, because you know you have the strength, the strategy, and the boundaries to handle absolutely anything that comes your way. That is the perfect place to wrap up today's conversation. If today's episode resonated with you, or if you have ever had to learn one of these hard strategic lessons, the tough way in your own career or life. I want to hear about it. Drop your thoughts and experiences in the comments section down below. I read through them and love seeing the real-world wisdom this community brings to the table. And if you found value in this discussion, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and share this episode with a friend who might need a little reminder of their own strength today. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I will see you all in the next episode.